Hello everyone, we are on part 2 and this is going to go into sanding 3D prints for cosplay. The first part on sanding foam for cosplay you can see in the link below or up in the corners, and we will continue on from there. No point in wasting more time, let's just dive straight in. We've been kind of hounding on the foam, and I love foam. I find it's fairly quick, but like, what about 3D prints? I find that, like, you know, suddenly the sanding game changes. You're looking at different fillers, different chemicals to breathe in, and also, like, you know, I'm finding that every filament seems to be different, and I've got my own sort of take on that. But at the same time, as much as I want to, you know, share that right here, is I've got my channel. I can share that a little later and I can talk to you guys about that, but I want to hear what you guys do with like 3D prints and what your preferred filaments are and methodology.
Yeah, what's your preferred, Beverly?
Yeah, my preferred is throw my 3D printer in the garbage, because this is I have a very bad relationship with my 3D printers. I have a resin printer which has misbehaved less. But I've had so much bad luck. I've gone through like 3 different 3D printers, and I think someone out there is having really great luck because I've stolen all of the bad juju from them. So I'm actually I need to reestablish a good relationship with a printer that is not going to be such a pain in the butt. So I am deferring to Eric on all of this. He has. But this is why we are a good team.
Yep.
I'm the phone person, and he is the 3D. He's the camp counselor that is a 3D printing guru.
I mean, I'm really a multi-discipline, you know. I did tons of foam building and got into a lot of hand work, you know, clay work, and then got into 3D printing. And you know, the best thing about 3D printers is they work while you're sleeping. I mean, really, it's as simple as that. I mean, you know, and again, when time is money or some type of exchange, it's like having a little robot do your work for you. It's 3D printing. I mean, there's just like so many avenues with that, but really it starts with what type of printing are you doing? You know, FDM versus resin. There's, you know, a whole different way of looking at things. If you're in filament FDM printing, my preferred filament's PETG.
Right.
Mostly because it's easier to work with and not as toxic as ABS. I've never printed ABS. Is ABS the one that you have to have like a constant, like a regular temperature around it in order for it to print? Yeah, it's a lot more. It's more difficult because you need you basically need a hood or a shroud or an enclosure to keep ambient temperature where it needs to be. It tends to be more toxic, so you need like a way of venting it out. And I just never delved into it because my shop is at my house. This is part of my basement. My printers are right here. So ABS was just never an option for me. Started out with PLA because it prints really, really well. It just doesn't have the durability or the sandability.
Everybody's doing this PLA Plus, and it's great. It's awesome stuff. But I recently came across, I do radio-controlled aircraft. It's one of my hobbies. And you can 3D print with this stuff called lightweight PLA. And this PLA foams up at certain temperatures. And whatever temperature you're printing at foams it up more or less. So at 210, it doesn't foam at all. At 240, it foams to like double the size. Now, you can start taking advantage of these properties. And this is diving into like real nerdiness that I'll cover in my channel later. But what I'll do is I'll print it like, say, 215, 220, so it expands just a little bit. And that little foamy layer that it leaves on the outside is sandable. It is beautiful. It's like sanding wood. Honestly, I'm not sure. I wish the camera could pick this up. I get goosebumps every time I talk about this because it is beautiful. Oh my God, it is so amazing.
One of the Lego guns at the con?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I was amazed by that. When you showed it to me, I was like, holy crap, and it's so light. Oh my gosh, it's so light.
Well, that print there was done at 240, so it's foamed up as much as it possibly can, but you can still get the best of both worlds on something that is, because when it foams up, it's not as strong. So you end up losing a little bit of strength, but you end up getting like a finish that you can use or that you can sand really well. In fact, The foaming I found is that instead of doing, like, say, a 0.1 layer, I can do a 0.2 or 0.3 layer. With enough foaming, those layers disappear because it foams up and it just disappears. So there is no sanding. In my work, where I've gone into different prop shops, is you end up having the old school guys and you have the new school guys, and they end up bashing heads and going, well, this way is better and that way's better. And every freaking time, is they both have valid points, but when you mesh those two worlds together, magic happens. And I spent so much of my time being either, the camp counselor, somebody that's trying to deal with that conversation, or I'm translating from, old school English to new school English. And as soon as people understand that, like, yeah, 3D printer will give you the bones of your structure, and then you can make it pretty afterwards on the shop thing, but now you don't have to spend 15 hours building the damn thing. Some of these old school guys are like, oh, and their new little geeky friend is going to make their life easier, and vice versa, because the geeky guys, like me, this is my biggest problem, is that I can create the structure, I can make it look good, but I don't have the patience or the time to sand and paint and make it look pretty. So then you hand it off to somebody like Beverly that will do that final little bit. And we don't always have those friends, but regardless, that's my rant. I'm done. Yeah, let's go back.
and that's the thing, so as I said, when I started out with 3D printing, it's just like, there's so many different things, and there's always new products coming out. Polymaker just sent me, like, a month ago, they're working on a formulation of PLA that actually they're going to call CosPLA, which is pretty funny. Mm-hmm. So CosPLA. It's a PLA that's formulated specifically to be easier to sand, but still be durable and lightweight. They sent me 2 different samples of it because they wanted, people that are doing props to be like, hey, try these out, tell us what you think, which one you prefer. Honestly, I like them both. In fact, my Mando armor that I was wearing at the con, the back plate was literally 2 pieces, and I printed one in one and one in the other, glued them together, and it was one piece, and nobody knows that it's 2 different versions of PLA. So yeah, that's always changing. There's always new products out there, and the filament companies are finally starting to realize, hey, this prop thing's like a real thing, right? To the point where they're starting to formulate things just for prop making, make it easier to sand. I would say the CosPLA I use from Polymaker sands almost as well as PETG. The thing I like about PETG is it's pretty strong, has a little bit higher of a melt rate. Again, depending on which one you use, because there's still, like, there's all kinds of factors. And generally the stuff that has a higher melt threshold tends to be stronger, tends to last a little longer if it's sitting in a hot car.
Oh, totally.
Not fall apart and things like that. So for now, my preferred is PETG, mostly because when I want to sand it, I don't always sand a raw print.
Right.
Because I have a 2K urethane system, so which is like a whole other thing we can get into if you want. So there's that, because that's where we start, right? Do you sand or not sand a raw print? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends on my mood and how much sanding I want to do. So.
Fair enough.
And I usually some people start at like 120, 220. I usually, if I'm going to sand a raw print, even PLA, I start at 80 grit.
I always look at what I start with for sanding, and I think this might be my issue. I'm going to humble myself, but I generally start at like 60 or 40 grit. And I just find that it doesn't heat up the plastic and get all gummy when I'm using something, because you don't need as much speed, and you can really hog off the material that way. And even by hand, if you're rubbing it fast enough, you end up gumming up the paper, and it just isn't sanding properly.
Yeah, and that's like, again, why I like PETG, because I find that with most PETG, generally, even if you're using, because I'll use a vibration sander as much as I can. Now, obviously, if you have like rounds and curves and all kinds of things, you can't really do that. But one of the little hobby style that has the little triangle that's about this big. Those are great for raw prints. My Mando armor, I spent a day sanding the PETG, all the armor pieces down. On my multi-tool, it's got a sanding a sanding pad converter for my multi-tool, and just went at it with 80 grit to start off with.
Cool.
So, automotive. I suggest don't use it if you're at a house.
Yeah.
I spray mine in my backyard because I don't have a proper ventilation system for that. I wear full gear, Tyvek bodysuit, goggles, everything, because it's got some nasty chemicals in there. After sanding with 80 grit, you can hit 2K primer so heavy that and the beautiful thing about 2K is it's a curing process, not a drying process.
Yeah.
Those things can cure. I think it was 80 degrees the day I shot my stuff. It was ready to sand in an hour.
What would you recommend for someone who doesn't have access to?
I was going to cover that too. So prior to having the amazing use of 2K stuff, and for anybody that's confused, 2K just means 2-part. So generally, if you have 2 parts, it's a curing process, not a drying process. Curing is a chemical thing. Drying is, some type of moisture evaporating out. So almost all your enamels and stuff that come in a spray can, that's all drying, right? I'm a really big fan of Duplicolor products. I pretty much only use Duplicolor. For people that don't have the availability or setup to shoot 2K or whatever, the filler primers from Duplicolor work really great. Usually find it's like you start with 80 or 120 and hit your 3D print with that first. If you still have really deep, depending on the print, some prints are not as good as others. My printer's dialed in pretty well. Some people buy prints and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people are selling this crappy.
Yes.
If you need a little extra because you look at it as like, filler primer is probably not, even 5 coats of filler primer is not going to do this, then that's when you go to glazing putties. So my go-to is the 3M acryl putty. There's 3 different colors of acryl putty. The green is like 5 to 10 minute cure. The red is like a 10 to 15 minute cure, and then there's a white, I think goes like half an hour or something.
Oh, interesting.
It's expensive, but you get a big, huge 24-ounce tube of it. Also, the Bondo putty, glazing putty works well. There's also a 2-part Bondo. I'm talking about the single-part Bondo. It's just called Bondo glazing putty. You can get a tube of it, I think, as an add-on on Amazon for like $3.50. I've seen it. So it's, but it comes in like a little, I think it's a 4-ounce tube. So
totally.
So a lot of people look at the 3M, they're like, oh, it's so expensive. It's like $40, but if you buy 8 of those other tubes, then
Totally.
And then you can fill first, and then sand, and then prime over that, and then go from there. It's a good way to knock back if you can't sand it out. I mean, usually if you can sand it out, that's probably the better way to go, because then you're not relying on other things to adhere that possibly could crack and fall out and all that stuff. And then hit that with some filler primer, 3 or 4 coats. Start sanding generally at like 120 or 220 after filler primer.
Yeah.
Look at your piece. Decide if you want to keep going further.
This is one thing I think is funny, because you're going into this, and Beverly was doing the same thing, where I keep going like the patience and the the ham-fistedness. I think a lot of people need to understand that in movies where I end up working is that you're given things like, okay, tomorrow we need a suit of armor, right? And 90% of that is during the printing time. You literally will use like the 2K primer, a real quick, just skiff, get it off, and then hit paint, and then we're done. And when I hear the stories of these cosplayers going, hey, do you think this is screen accurate? And I just start laughing. It's like, no, it's not screen accurate, because like we need to go throw it in a dumpster and then take that dumpster and put it in the dump, then dig it out, then put it on, and that will look screen accurate. And you're like, oh, I got to beat it up. And you're like, no, that's literally how it looks going in.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you're familiar with Frank Ippolito, right?
Oh yeah, no, I know Frank.
Yeah.
Frank's awesome.
I was talking to Frank one time about doing costumes for cons and stuff compared to the industry and things, and he's like, yeah, we don't have time to do what cosplayers do. I mean, some cosplayers will spend I think we were at BlizzCon that we were talking about, and there's literally cosplayers that are BlizzCon fanatics that because BlizzCon's a pretty big championship if you win that. As far as the cosplay scene goes, and And there's literally some cosplayers that'll spend 2 years on one costume. It's like, we can't do that. We can't compete with that. It's always going to be better. It's always going to be, cleaner and smoother and everything else, because we might have to make a costume in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 day. I mean, And Sand Camp is, one thing we kind of push it as is like, bring it to the next level, because a lot of people want to compete, right?
Totally.
And the things we're talking about are the things that judges, because we've both been judges at numerous cons. We know what judges look for, because we have been judges, and we'll probably be judges in the future as well. And all these certain things, it's like the second I see a layer line from a 3D print, I mean, it doesn't matter how good the costume is, I'm just going to be like, you just didn't put the time in,
Right.
Totally.
Because it pulls you out of that reality.
Yeah, what we're talking about with cosplay, these folks are making pieces of art that they're going to be carrying around and showing off, and it's, I guess, the focus of what we do versus what they do, what you're required to do or asked to do in such a short amount of time. They've got the time, and if they want those results, then they can take their time getting those results. So we're just trying to give people the tools and the ability to choose to go that far with their project if they want to.
So I'm gonna humble brag for a minute, because Beverly and I worked on Marvel used to have this web series called Marvel Becoming, and Beverly and I worked on the Wasp together. She did the whole suit, the wings. I did the helmet, hand sculpted it, all that. We had it at Dragon Con in 2018. Is that what it was? And that was a long time ago already.
2018.
And we both personally know people that worked on that team, that Marvel, that worked on that suit, and they're like, yeah, it's better than what we made. Because we had 4 or 5 months to build it, and they had who knows how much time. The
requirements that they have are different. They have to make hero suits, and they have to make like different versions of these things in multiples, and they have to be able to make them so that the adhesive can be taken apart and put back together again if they need to. So their requirements are so different from what we need to do. I couldn't sit down in my Wasp costume without getting help getting back up.
Yeah.
I didn't realize after it took me a couple of years to realize that there were multiple versions of suits and props out there that have to be created for different purposes on set and for a movie. So that actually was kind of nice to learn. I did not realize that.
So like a lot of what we do is more, it is, like you said, it's a lot of time and patience. When I first started out doing all this stuff, I thought, I had to go to like, I don't know, 1,200, 1,600 every time I sanded something. So,
wow, really?
And then one time I was at Bill's studio, and I was looking at something, and I'm like, oh wow, this is great. What'd you sand this? It was like 400. I'm like, what? He's like, I rarely ever go over 600 on a project. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, what have you been doing? I'm like, I go to like 1,800. He's like, stop that. I'm like, I will. I didn't know. I was just like, I didn't know. I just thought you just keep going.
Beverly's got a book coming out, and I've pre-ordered it. All of you should pre-order it. And I already know it's going to be loaded full of all sorts of geeky goodness. But come on, pimp your book there, Beverly. Let us know what's awesome about it.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book. It's called The Ultimate Cosplayer's Guide to eBay Foam, and actually I have a picture of it right here. Let me grab it so I can have some show and tell. So, I just love this photo.
Yes.
So, this is my book. It's coming out at Thanksgiving, and I wanted to initially write a book about patterning with EVA foam, patterning your projects. So making armor that is fitted to you, and all the goodness that I know about making those projects really fit you, and then like how to cut EVA foam, how to sand it, how to use a Dremel. And all the products, I went through a bunch of different products that you can use to smooth things out, and pretty much almost everything in my brain on paper. So it's a giant book. It's going to be 240 pages, and then there's some projects in there that I show you step by step how to make there's like a pauldron and a dagger and a spell book Actually, no, I'm hiding it. Let me see. I'm actually really proud of this thing.
It's very cool. I've
My
seen it.
giant
Oh my God, that's amazing.
spell book. There's
Ben
some
has the
painting
things for books,
techniques.
so.
Yes. So yeah, it's just it's designed to kind of be a like not an encyclopedia, but it's really, really dense. There's so much stuff in there. There's charts in there. Like I talk about heat guns and the different kinds of heat guns out there because they are different. I mean, I'm just a big nerd.
Wow, if you're getting down to charts with heat guns, man, this is going to be my book. I'm doubly excited.
Yeah, no, so it's coming out on Thanksgiving, and I am so excited. It's been over a year in the making, so can't wait.
Yes, and your socials and everything. Where can everybody find you?
I'm Downen Creative Studios everywhere. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. I have a website, YouTube, Twitter, probably other places that I forgot that I haven't started accounts.
Yep.
But those are my most active places where you can find me.
Right. Okay, Eric, how do we find you? And you got a book coming out? Huh?
No books.
He's in my book.
Well, you're gonna be retired soon, right, Eric? So that's plenty of time to write a book.
That's right. I have excelled in showing up in other people's books, so you can pretty much just look for Corgeek, Coregeek, not Corgi. Anywhere, and I'll turn up. We also have an Instagram account for Sand Camp. That's Sand Dye Sand. So,
Yep.
Interesting.
So Sand Dye Sand on Instagram. Sand Camp will show up too. So.
That is really cool. I didn't know that.
I haven't posted any videos there in a while, but I plan on adding some more. I do have one thing I want to part with concerning sand.
Yeah.
If you go to sand anything that's been primered and your sandpaper gets gummy, that's because it's not dry. Wait for it to dry.
Yes.
And some people just don't seem to get that, and it's like, it really stinks because you're like, I really want to sand this thing, and you can't because, you go 2 swipes with your sandpaper, and you're doing like 120, and it's completely full of gunk instead of actual dust. It's got to make dust. Once it's making dust, it's dry, then you can work on your stuff. I've seen so many people have to go back and fix their stuff because they didn't wait for that. Waiting to dry really stinks. Yeah. But if you have the time to do that, it will only benefit you because then it'll actually sand the way it's supposed to. So
okay.
That's my final word.
Okay. How about that, Beverly? Can you top that? What's your closing word?
My closing one is buy my book.
I love it. I already have.
Thank you so much for
yeah.
your support.
And I'll have my closing comment, which goes right along with Eric here, is don't be like Ben, is be patient, right? Don't be ham-fisted, right? Learn to take your time. It's a Zen process. It doesn't have to be this angry go at it thing and that you need to get it done now. Is leave it overnight, let it dry, and then sand it lightly with delicate hands, not big meat hooks like I do. I cannot thank these two enough. Them generously donating their time to help me work through some of the stuff and talk about sanding, everybody's sort of bane of existence in cosplay. And this is the best way to kind of go through it and talk to other people with the same problem. And man, I picked up so much from this. It's absolutely amazing. Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit like, go and follow my Patreon and get onto my Discord server so we can all chat about Sand Camp. Again, thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Eric, for all your help. We've got the Corgeek and Beverly Downen. Man, what can I say? These two are legendary for what they've built. And I'm speechless.